Hello, I'm Patti Miller and I'm reading from my new book, True Friends. It explores friendship, women's friendship, and in particular a friendship that broke up. So I'm just going to read from a part quite near the beginning. There was an air of excitement every time Gina and I met in Paris. I want to use the word thrilling, which might sound excessive, but it's the word I think of when I recall us together, the two of us. We talked about acting and writing, about the process of creativity, how an unseen image, a connection, comes up out of the dark and finds its place so exactly it's as if it had always been there, how random pieces float together and form a shape that had been waiting to be made, how you sit down in the morning with nothing in your head, but by lunchtime a room, a chair, a table exists, a painting hangs on a wall, a character has started to speak. Someone is breathing. How do you write a play when one of the central characters is a small child? I asked. I could use a puppet or voiceover or shadow play, Gina said. We asked precise questions and found precise answers. We smiled with fire in our eyes. At times there was such intensity that I felt afraid. I remember one conversation, perhaps in the Jardin des Tuileries, as I have a note in an old diary about meeting there. I don't recall the words of the conversation, but I clearly see Gina's eyes and the pale oval of her face. There are no surroundings in the memory, only eyes in a face, but I can colour in the Tuileries from hundreds of other visits. White dust on my shoes, clipped rows of geometric chestnut trees, people sitting on green metal chairs around the ponds. It was just the two of us. Anthony was away in Amsterdam for work. We sat next to each other, our heads turned towards each other, deep in conversation. Her gaze was so intense, and she spoke with such fiery passion, and I listened with such absorption. What was she saying? That I suddenly felt a light-filled self had been ignited inside me, the ordinary woman burned away. It created a falling sensation, a vertigo. I was falling into her, a kind of dissolution of self. It wasn't physical or sexual, but it still frightened me. I felt myself draw back, a perhaps imperceptible drawing back from the edge of no return. Why was I afraid? Does part of me fear being annihilated, being eaten alive? Why? Doesn't the whole universe long for oneness? Spiritual teaching says the individual soul despairs in duality, that it longs to merge with the Godhead in transcendental bliss. Nature too exists as Gaia, one unified ecosystem, each plant and creature needing other plants, microbes, soil, air. And sexual union is essentially the merging of two bodies, forgetting individual self and dissolving pleasure. Psychologically too, each newborn baby drowns in her mother's eyes, having no sense yet of a separate self. Even at the level of physics, subatomic particles cling together, violently resisting attempts to split them apart. If an element loses or gains one electron, it becomes something else. But if I dissolve into another, I no longer exist. When Montaigne says, "In the friendship I am talking about, souls are mingled and confounded in so universal a blending that it effaces the seam which joins them together," part of me cries out vehemently, "No, no, I cannot lose my carefully made self in someone else." And yet, there is still the longing to be received completely. As I recall my friendships, it feels like a kaleidoscope, memories falling and shifting to make new patterns as I hold it up to the light. The story of Gina has exotic, brightly coloured fragments, scarlet, gold and blue, which make it seem that she's been the most important of my friends. And certainly she has mattered a great deal. There was, I thought, a rare communion of thought and feeling between us, but I have had that communion with other friends at different times. I know I'm obsessively circling back over the friendship with her, twisting and retwisting the kaleidoscope, but that's because it ended. A flow of warmth and connection was suddenly withheld, and I don't know why. I don't remember any unforgivable acts, any violent arguments, although there was one rift about halfway through our 15-year friendship, a ragged, stretching split that opened up between us. Perhaps that serrated the edges of the kaleidoscope pieces or created a flaw in the glass. I have to continue to let them fall to see where the flaw was. In the beginning, I was trying to understand what had happened to the broken friendship. I was hurt and bewilderment is a strong engine. But since I've begun writing, the hurt has faded. Now there is a pure desire to try to recreate what was, to see how we know anyone, and how anyone knows us, how others live in our minds at the cellular level of memory, to see how all the knowledge we have of each other and of existence, all we've ever had, is a selective electrochemical story in our brains about the things we have seen, smelled, touched, tasted, heard, right back to the first story ever written. Thank you. That's my reading from True Friends.